Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Vlogmas, where I am posting every single day in December. Today we're talking about podcasts. Now, there are really two reasons why I decided to make this video. First off, every time I do a Q&A, someone always asks how I stay so motivated. I work probably about 15 to 20 hours on YouTube, social media kind of stuff every week, and I'm also working a full-time job. So it takes a lot of self-motivation to kind of get everything done that I'm trying to get done in my life and try to keep everything sane and organized and get stuff out on time. And don't get me wrong, I'm not great at it. I'm not the best self-motivated person in the world by any means. I always have those days where I'm lazy on the couch. I think everyone does. But I do consider myself someone who is very self-motivated in the fact that if I want to get something done, I will. And I set deadlines for myself that I usually meet most of the time, unless there is some extenuating circumstance. But I am really good at trying to stay on top of things, get things out. You guys can see that from my YouTube channel. I've been very good at getting out videos on a consistent basis, and I think it just kind of, the proof is there, you know? So I do consider myself to be very self-motivated, and one of the ways that I am self-motivated is through podcasts. And lately I have been listening to a lot of podcasts. I listen to them at work, which I find is really helpful in the self-motivating factor because I listen to them all day at work. I am in a marketing position, so a lot of the stuff I do, I can do while listening to stuff. Like I'll be in Photoshop or something, so I can do that while I have headphones in and listen to a podcast. I'll be listening to a podcast and it'll have me all motivated to go, and then 5 o'clock rolls around and I'm like, yes, let's go do this. And I go home and I can work on stuff because I now have that motivation from the podcasts motivating me. I find other people's success stories definitely to be a huge motivator to me. It's like, oh, they can do it, so I can too. Let's go, let's do it. Or just, you know, self-confidence kind of boosting things as well. A lot of these are very girl-powered podcasts. Not gonna lie, if you're a guy watching, these may not be for you, but women, these are totally empowering for, and I mean, guys, you might get empowered from these too, but their main demographic is definitely women listening to them. So I'm going to share them with you guys today. In no particular order whatsoever, the first podcast we're going to talk about is Kalyn's Coffee Talks. So Kalyn Nicholson is a YouTuber who I started watching back in 2016, I want to say. I've watched her channel for years. She is my absolute favorite YouTuber, hands down. She started a podcast a couple years ago and I have loved listening to it. She used to do these things on her YouTube channel called Coffee Talks, which were basically her just talking about some sort of life issue, whether it be self-confidence, body image, just things that happened to her in her life where she learned some sort of lesson or an experience she went through, and I find them to be super, super uplifting. It always has a very positive message to it, and when she started making these videos into podcasts, I absolutely had to listen. This is a podcast I've been listening to literally since when the first episode came out. I watch it or listen to it on the day it drops every single time. I love listening to Kalyn's Coffee Talk podcast. I find they are the only podcast I can actually listen to where there is one person on the mic. All the other podcasts have like multiple people and I can't listen just like one person ramble on forever. Kalyn is the only person that I truly can say that I can. So some very recent ones of Kalyn's Coffee Talks that I've loved recently have been 9 tips to stay motivated for winter. I really liked the one she did about, is there such a thing as healthy life distraction? She talked a lot about how we sometimes, you know, need to sit down and binge Netflix for a little bit and how that's actually kind of healthy into recharging our bodies and kind of just a refresh all the time. That one was really good. And then she also did one on how to manifest your life. And I found that super powerful just because I 100% believe in the power of manifestation. I think that is totally like such a true thing. And she kind of just aced the way she talked about it and put the whole concept of it into words that just kind of made sense. And I really, really loved that one. Next is the Bossy Women podcast. So this is actually locally produced right in my hometown. There are 2 girls who live very locally to me that do produce this, and they do interviews. You're gonna see this is gonna definitely be a trend, but they do interviews about other entrepreneurs who are in the local area or kind of just outside in this area. They bring them in, they interview them, ask them a bunch of questions about their business, how they got started, and I really love this one because it is local for me. Now I know a lot of you guys, I'm sure all of you probably listening, don't really live anywhere near here, which is totally fine. I think it's still definitely something you should check out. There are a lot of well-known brands on there where people come in, talk about literally how they started from nothing, got rid of their 9-to-5s, and started this journey. So Bossy Women I actually started listening to because Katie Steckley is one of the owners, makers of the podcast, and I started watching her YouTube channel, and then from there I learned she was doing this podcast. So I took a listen to it, and I think I have literally now listened to every single episode. There have been some amazing speakers come on there, and the cool thing that I love about it too is it is very relatable to my own life, because a lot of these entrepreneurs are in artsy fields like myself. I'm in graphic design, so I can relate a lot of what my life goals are to what these women have done. And then also Katie becoming this successful YouTuber. I literally started watching her channel and she only had like 2,000 subscribers, and now she has like tens of thousands. So it's really cool also to see her grow and her perspective on things and how that's changed and what she's learned as well. So a couple that I actually found super interesting was one they did a while ago called Should Entrepreneurs Go to University? And then they also did one recently called How to Grow on Social Media and Stay Motivated. So just some really great informational stuff on there. Next, I listened to Pretty Basic. Now, Pretty Basic is a lot more of like a girl talk, kind of like not gossipy, but a little bit of a podcast. So it's run by Alicia Marie and Remy Ashton, who are YouTubers. They're very lifestyle community YouTubers. And they started this podcast called Pretty Basic. And I started listening to it because at first they were talking a lot about their YouTube stuff. And they do still talk a lot about their YouTube stuff, but they talk about a lot of the kind of behind the scenes aspect of it and the stuff that we don't see on your side of the camera, the stuff about agents, the stuff about how they get to go to award shows, how they get brand deals, all that kind of stuff, like where it's coming from and what the actual truth is behind it, because there's a lot of kind of gray area a lot of people don't know about. So they're kind of busting some myths while also adding in a lot of anecdotes about their life, about experience they've had, and just general life lessons. They're a couple years older than me, so you know, they've gone through a couple things a couple years before I have, just like general life things they've learned, and it's really cool to see. So I definitely recommend, if you're looking for the YouTube tips, that you look at some of their earlier podcasts that they did, but I mean, all of them are still really good to listen to for sure. Some of the top ones, actually, probably my favorite one of all time from them is actually the second podcast they ever did, and it's called Content Baby Content. And it really gave an inside look as to what it's like to be a YouTuber with millions of subscribers and what the background looks like to that, and it was really neat to see. And they did another one too, looking into collabs, called The Truth Behind Collabs, and it was also really interesting. I find the back end of YouTube very interesting to see so much, not secretive stuff, but also kind of secretive stuff, and very much the kind of the fakeness that goes on and how brands really interact with some of these YouTubers. It's very interesting to see to me. Next is the YouTube Power Hour podcast. Okay, so I really love this podcast. However, I do have a little bit of beef with it, but basically I love this podcast because what they're doing is they're bringing YouTubers who started at the bottom and made their way up and grew hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they're bringing them on there and they're interviewing them. My beef with this podcast right now is that there are no new episodes, so what they're doing instead is they're reposting old episodes. So I mean, there's probably hundreds of episodes on here that I haven't listened to, so they'll post literally something that was done years ago, and the information on it is slightly out of date now because they just reposted it, so it seems like it's brand new, but actually it was, you know, recorded a long time ago. So I have a little bit of beef with that, but also the content is really good. So one cool one that I really enjoyed listening to was How to Research Video Topic Ideas. I think that was really neat and just gave a very different kind of analytical perspective on the concept. They've also interviewed people like the Ohana Adventure, which some of you Disney guys might be interested in. And then there was another really cool one. This is actually probably the one I think about the most. There's always podcasts where you like think about the message after and it's just like ingrained in your brain. And this is one that I listened to a couple months ago, but every once in a while the message from it still pops back into my head, which is how you know it's legit. So they had an actual scientist doctor come in and talk about how you can train your brain for success on YouTube. I found it super interesting. It very much plays into the concept of manifestation, which I thought was really cool. So it's putting the science behind manifestation, which is something I'd never seen anyone do before, and statistical facts and ways your brain works about how you can literally take an idea and manifest it so hard that it comes true. Obviously you have to work for it, but just the idea of manifestation and putting that in some sort of science was really interesting to me. So that one is called Can You Train Your Brain for YouTube Success? And that one just literally blew my mind. And then finally, this is actually another locally done one, and it is called the Papaya Podcast. I just started listening to this week actually, but I think I've listened to almost all of the episodes now. I literally work 8 hours a day, guys. I listen to this 8 hours a day. It's kind of insane. The Papaya Podcast is done by this woman who has definitely a bit of a struggle story. She went through a divorce, she struggled a lot with her weight, and then she became this extremely body positive person and stopped kind of focusing on, you know, the whole diet culture and that. And out of that kind of journey, she started this blog called The Bird's Papaya, and she started talking about her journey and growing from there. And on here she talks a lot about her journey, but also interviews people who have had, you know, similar journeys or started their own business or something where they kind of went from nothing to something stories, and I find that super interesting. In comparison to the other podcasts I talked about, there aren't a ton of episodes on there, so they are definitely pretty achievable if you wanted to, you know, catch up from the start. And it's once again cool just for me to see a semi-local podcaster or blogger start from the bottom and work their way up, and that is definitely a self-motivating factor for me. So some of my favorites of hers was actually the pilot episode. I think you get a very good overview of her story in it. I think that's really important to watching the podcast grow, knowing kind of the background behind it. And another one I've really enjoyed listening to was the one about focusing on yourself. And even though, you know, obviously I don't have kids or anything, I think it's really important, the concept of self-care, and you need to come before you can help focus on everyone else. So yeah, those are my top 5 podcasts. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Go check out my channel and subscribe, because we are posting videos every single day of December. If you guys want me to get more into things that kind of help motivate me, let me know. But thank you again so much for watching, and have a magical rest of your day.